Hey everyone, Dave Greco here, and welcome back to the channel. And before we get started, let's address something here. I realize I have a Christmas tree up in the office already. Let's just say it's 2020, and we're just gonna get it any little thing that brings us happiness at this point. So bring on Christmas. I've already started decorating the whole house already. We usually wait till after Thanksgiving, but not this year. So today I have a bit of a time lapse to show everybody. Probably like a lot of people, I've been pretty excited for one thing.
Where every soul has its place.
Yeah, and so we finally get to dive into that next week, but like every WoW expansion, whether it be Classic or any of the previous expansions, I love doing like a painting up of my main that I plan on playing for the expansion, or at least for a good chunk of it. And so that's exactly what we did here. So I apologize also that this is going to be a time lapse from my Twitch stream. I usually do a separate recording. I actually had no idea this was even going to be a final painting the way it turned out. We were just gonna sketch and hang out on Monday. And another thing before we get started on the video, this video, like a lot of videos on the channel, is sponsored by WACOM, a fantastic company and a drawing tablet that I have used exclusively pretty much since 2003. I do all my work on it. I use the Cintiq 27-inch. It is amazing. If you guys are looking to break into any of their products, I'll have a link down below for any of them to check out. So thanks to everybody for checking those out, and to thank you to Wacom for all your support and all with everything that I do on the channel. Y'all are amazing. All right, so let's hop into it. Let's roll the Magcar Death Knight that I plan on rocking on Monday. All right, thanks so much for hanging out for the commentary on this piece. Like I said before, I wasn't sure this was actually going to be anything more than just kind of a warm-up sketch and just kind of hanging out with Twitch chat viewers for the day. But the piece turned into something pretty cool that I actually liked the final outcome. So I did want to get a time lapse up for everybody to watch. So I do apologize it being a recording from the stream. It's just a little bit messier and it's not as clean as some of the others. So basically, like anything, we were just kind of talking about Shadowlands coming out, and I always love drawing my character. It's always a huge deal for me to figure out kind of what I'm maining every expansion. As a longtime player, I started playing WoW in 2004 during the open beta, and had a major effect on my life. Probably like a lot of people, it was definitely the game that made me want to do work for Blizzard at one point. So it's always been a really big deal to me in my life. So I didn't need to go too complicated for the idea when we started sketching this up. I thought just like a straightforward kind of portrait would be kind of cool, kind of show the kind of raw emotion that an orc has. And then, it wasn't too complicated, and it was really like a nice kind of chill sketch to do something to. One thing that's always interesting about creating orcs' faces is there definitely is that kind of familiarity of like drawing a human face, but their proportions are very different. The shape of their nose is very different. And so there's a lot of kind of going back and forth and thinking how that works. Like their noses are shaped very differently than say like a human nose. And so how the light's going to hit it and go around, it's going to be a bit different. Their eyes are a little bit closer together sometimes, it feels like. And then such massive jaws and like bottom lips. It's crazy. So it's always something you kind of have to work out and figure out. So I actually spent a decent amount of time in the black and white. I think actually even when we first started doing it, we thought we were just going to have the piece be black and white. I thought it would actually be a neat piece. I was like, well, let's throw some color on it and see what we get out of it. But I'm pretty sure the black and white is going to be a better final. But in the end, I actually really like the color version we did a lot more than even the black and white. So this was our first flip right here. I remember like how much it looked like side of his face almost looked like it was sagging. So it's always good to do that flip early, take like a warp tool or, and just kind of shift it back up, whatever you need to fix. So I went in pretty early trying to figure out kind of what we were going to do for the lighting and how I'm going to kind of focus some of the lighting on the face. I think that's really important, especially for something that's going to be just like a really simple kind of portrait of a character, and having like this light hitting this areas of the face that I want is really going to bring the viewer's eye right into it. And I was even thinking about having like a little bit more of that light from the bottom coming up, and so that was something as well.
But this stage is really, really nice because you can, and most of this is using the DG main, but I am trying to use some of the other brushes in my brush pack that just have like a little bit more texture and maybe some more kind of like brush shape and brush strokes in it, just to give it that kind of like messy underpainting that can sit back there, say at the background or some of the brushes underneath. So I'm trying to break out from kind of my usual way I start a piece, and I'm trying to skip certain steps if I can. Like I don't need to spend so much time kind of evolving some area before we go into the light. And then right there, that's a great way of using your digital tools, to help you is, I just copy and pasted pretty much the whole left side of his, or right part of his face, and duped it to the other. We can do some tweaks after the fact, but usually when I'm trying to save time, there's no reason to just paint it entirely from scratch. So a big thing down here is I want to focus on is finding good shapes for his beard. Sorry, we keep showing the game a lot. I do want to keep showing everyone the reference that I was using. I just had the game pulled up and I was trying to at least get close to a lot of the character features that I had in my own character. Some of the new customization options that they put in the game recently are fantastic. So it was a big reason for me wanting to do another portrait. Last time we actually did one of these portraits was the dwarf priest right before the classic launch. So it actually has been a little bit. Yeah, so for like any of these commentaries, you're free to turn me off completely. You can put a little music in the background. We usually don't put any music in the background at all as we're recording these. So you're welcome to put on whichever one you need. I still have this idea that I want to build up the light pretty slow though. Like I don't want to just like blow out the glow in his eyes, or I wasn't sure kind of what we were going to do as far as lighting is concerned. But really, I'm now using mostly the DG main and just cleaning up a lot of everything around. I don't have to go into the real finer details of the hair, but there's still a lot of like silhouette shapes I haven't figured out. And I think figuring out those larger shapes first before we get into the smaller ones is going to be pretty important. Like I said, always a good idea to flip it if you need. Yeah, there's a lot of things I was trying to figure out, especially they're so strange with that lower lip and kind of how it protrudes and comes back down into the chin area. So that's something you always kind of have to figure out, especially when you're working on an orc. And their foreheads, they sometimes have these like smaller looking foreheads with these big brows. They can get a bit crazy. But yeah, I'm slowly starting to add some more of those like darker lines into the piece too. I still like that line work to bleed through. And that's something I've really been playing with lately, having the line work in there. But I'm also like trying to render it enough where the line work doesn't feel like it's flattening the piece out. And I give a little bit of glow just to one eye where it's breaking the border. And so you can see like I just use like the airbrush. I just do like a little I just kind of like pepper it right on top of the eye just so it breaks the border of those darker lines on that one eye. And he's like, it's easy to go crazy on a whole, all different areas of your piece that have that kind of look because it makes it feel like a little bit more polished. But I think it's that restraint is actually pretty nice to have. So hoping everyone else is excited for the expansion as I am. I'm sure most people are. I know a lot of people on the channel here play WoW as well and have for a lot of years. It's been very super exciting for me. It's been a super busy month. We are working on a ton of work right now. Freelance has been crazy. We're working on a lot of projects between Hearthstone and Magic the Gathering. And I can't wait to be able to share and showcase all that work with everybody. It's really a fantastic time right now. Yeah, so like this is a nice stage because this is really just like polish stage. But we actually haven't figured out a lot of like these bigger areas of light. I think we might actually not figure out some of those till we start hitting up the color. The question that I get a lot while working on these pieces is, when do you know that you're done with it? And the biggest thing is, like, say if I look at this piece right now, the face and some of the beard near his face has a different polish level than the beard down below. And so that's a big indicator to me that there's still more work to be done. Like every area should at least have pretty close to the same area of polish. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff I was trying to figure out too, especially with how the beard was connecting underneath where like the cheekbone is and his cheek. There's a lot of like really kind of specific orcish face shapes I wanted to get in there. And so that's a kind of a good back and forth. You know, I stayed pretty zoomed out. I actually don't even notice till I rewatch these time lapses, kind of like how zoomed out I stay. I think a lot of people kind of zoom in more than I do, but I like to try to take in as much of the piece as I can. Yeah, and don't mind the sexy pickled pinup goal. We just have a goal on the stream. And then people will get a... you know what it is? Sexy pickled pinup calendar person? I don't even know. I can't even begin to guess what it could be, but we're in it. We've got to do it once we reach it. Yeah, so even down here, it's just trying to get the same level of polish that's hitting up on the top area. I think right here, this is close to the second day of working. We only spent about, I think, 45 minutes on this final black and white before we started jamming into the color. And I wanted the shape of his shoulders in there, but I didn't want to go into like a lot of the detail of his lower body. It just felt like this kind of cool portrait where you just had this kind of like loose oil painting that kind of sat below and didn't need a lot of detail. I thought that kind of added to the piece a little bit. You know, I wanted this idea that this orc almost felt as old and tired as the time that I've been playing the game. So, you know, this whole idea of going to Shadowlands, you know, we got to deal with Sylvanas eventually. And so that kind of like just wear and age on him. I wanted to that feeling to carry through on him. Like even looking at right now, even at this stage would probably be enough to jam in a color. So I can't imagine I took too much longer. I think I wanted to get some of this stuff wrapped up at the bottom. But it feels like every time I went to work on the bottom, I get distracted a little bit and start hitting them up top again. All right, so it looks like we're leaping into the color. I'm trying to be a little bit more careful with this lately, and that is just that light layer of a little bit of red that underneath. It just gives a little bit of a base to the black and white before I start adding color right on top. It's like kind of just doing like a wash on if you're working traditional, right? Just to give something underneath it. And really I'm just using some overlay layers right now just to give some kind of quick local color, you know, some kind of like fleshy brown skin tone. But I also want to give like these little bit of pinks and reds and into little areas where I can add it onto the nose or onto the mouth and little parts of the ears. But I also know I want a lot of this like cool environment lighting hitting the character, so we have some nice, so we can play with those cool blues and the warmth of the light hitting the character. I knew right away that's kind of like what I wanted to do, especially knowing that he's gonna have those like bluish kind of frozen eyes. That would play really nice if around his face right there I felt a lot warmer. So that's kind of like where I am mentally when I start doing the color, and I was like, all right, that's a good place to start. Let's figure that out. And so kind of washing that kind of blue over some of the sketch is really either like pushing it back and just getting a little bit of color on kind of where I know some of these shadow areas might be. And then we can start to do a lot of the same polish on the piece that we're doing also on the black and white, but now we're just hitting it with color. And I think there's like a good thing about hitting like a lot of these little subtleties and differences of color. So even on one of his tusks, like there's a bunch of kind of, you know, there's a lot of warm colors, but towards the bottom, you can see it goes more back into the blue. So I think it's good to get both. You know, I think when you're rendering and bringing out these shapes, you always want to feel like you're bringing the shapes forward too, right? Like even everything on his face, if it's like the brows, they should still be coming forward just a little bit and just getting that polish in there. You know, push it back and then, you know, pull it forward. It really is going to make a big difference. Really, I end up cutting light across the face. It's something I do on a lot of pieces. Another thing I'm trying to be careful of, so I don't do it too much. You can just create your own interesting light shapes. It works. Sometimes I use it as a crush if I can't find a good composition without it. Maybe that light itself will do a lot of the work, which it definitely does sometimes. And so I do like a multiply layer for that color in the background. It's like, you know, it's like a little bit of blue. It's a coolish color, but I didn't want it to get too saturated. But I wanted that nice contrast happening, right? But this is a good place, true, and this is where we can really figure out kind of like those little details and what the color we want to put in. So it's like I kind of push everything back from the sketch and then redrew in some lines of all the wrinkles, then add a little bit of highlights on those wrinkles, and push them all back. And we're kind of playing with it. I think this is even earlier. You could see one of the eyes is further away from the nostril than the other one, and I'm grabbing the eye and just kind of shifting it over. But these are good things to look at as you're working on a piece. Always try to look at it, you know, those small little things and like, is something not feeling right? Is it not lining up right? What could it be? You know, and do that shit. See right there, and do that tweak where it needs to be. Yeah, so we're still, like I said, we're putting in some of the darker values, a little bit more highlights, a little more darker values, a little more highlights, and that's what you're really looking to do with your own work. This is something I like to do sometimes too. You have to be pretty careful with it. So if I have like a pretty strong shadow area hitting this area of light, and you can actually kind of see it I use the older character I had drawn. It's over my camera, so it doesn't look like I'm warping through time. And the same kind of deal is just hitting it with that kind of little hit of like, it's a little bit more saturated, it's a little bit more orange right on the edge. We just have to be really subtle, really careful with it. It can go too far. There's a really careful balance with the colors, the color harmony that's happening right here. And I think I'm getting better at it than I used to be. I think there's a lot more subtlety that I've learned over the past year or 2 years. And I think this piece actually shows some refinement and a little bit more control in my color temperatures and my lighting. So I hope people can see that, because I think there is definitely improvement on that kind of subtlety of stuff I'm trying to figure out always with all my work. And I hope this piece too helps you be able to kind of analyze that and bring it into your own work as well. That's really kind of the biggest goal of these videos, is really not like, oh, you have to do this one step to get this one result. It's really just about, looking at your own work, trying to identify problems, how you solve those problems. But the biggest thing is just being able to see the problem in the first place, right? That's how we constantly grow, is just being able to see those problems. Yeah, I want to give more a little light kind of one side of the face. It just, I think when we started drawing the hair at the top, it just kind of popped out to me to have this cool light hitting from the side as well. So that was something I was trying to manage and have that work. But I think that was a nice addition. I think that helped. Like I said, orc faces or orcs are a ton of fun to do, because you can really just like jack them up pretty hard and they still look just as badass. Some other characters you have to be really, really careful with some of the details, because it can really make them look kind of messed up. But like an orc, you can put huge scars, you can do whatever you want with these tusks, you can make them crazy, you can put rings in them, you can tattoo them, you can do, tons of crazy stuff, which is a lot of fun. It just kind of adds and adds to the character of it. Yeah, so this part gets a little monotonous. It's really kind of just figuring out a lot of these subtle hair shapes. And I feel like that's something I've been trying to improve on as well. As someone that loves to paint hair, I'm trying to create a lot of the hair that I usually do, but I'm getting a little bit finer with some of the line work and a little bit more subtle with some of the line work on the hair. just so it doesn't feel so big and clumpy. It still has that kind of unique shape and stylization to it, but it still feels like a little softer, right? I think if we look at his hair compared to some of the older hairs, that there's definitely like a softness to it that I'm trying to get, right? And that's just playing with, taking a brush, throw some shapes on, take the eraser and cut into it, see what kind of unique shapes you can. I wanted that kind of glow wisp that comes out of a Death Knight's eyes to be, to be pretty subtle. I don't want to go too crazy with it, having that kind of like waft around the side of his head. I think you just do like a little bit. Yeah, I think there's something that's really good too, is thinking about like all these little planes that exist underneath these shapes of hair. Looks like we have some type of cheddar biscuit pop in. We do talk about food a lot on stream. I can't help it. All right, so I do have a little bit of a cut right here just because it was really just about like 6 minutes of hair rendering. But it's pretty much the same thing. I'm really just trying to airbrush some slight values of color in it. I just take the line, I'm just using DG Main, cutting lines in it, add a little bit of light, a little bit of shadow on it. And it's really just like the same process as we go across the piece. There's really not like a lot of complicated things that happen in the creation of this one. But I think sometimes one of these things here, they can be kind of simple of an idea. And then I think if you just execute it at a level that you're happy with, you could have a pretty cool piece. I think some pieces I really overthink, and I think they're actually worse off in the end. But this one was, pretty straightforward. But I love working on this one. This is probably one of my favorite orcs that I've painted. So I'm super happy to be able to share that with everybody. And here we can take a look at the final of the piece. And I will have a link. I will have this is up on our station, everything. And then, so you can see the high res up on there as well. Guys, but thank you so much for hanging out. This was a little bit more of a chill episode. But I really like how the piece turned out, and I hope everybody has an awesome time in Shadowlands next week. I'm going to be taking at least a good chunk of the week off to hop into the expansion and actually give myself a little bit of a painting break, because I've been going pretty crazy lately. Okay, and that is it. I'll see you guys in the next episode.